everyone that was hired came into an organization where this having a system for everything was already the norm. So I didn't have the resistance of, hey, team of 20 people that has been operating for years this way, we're going to now start documenting all of our processes. There'd be a lot of pushback there.
Yeah.
I didn't have that problem. And I'm a big believer in giving my staff a lot of autonomy. And so I say, look, this is the finish line you need to get to. I don't care so much how you get there, but you better have a process documented that shows how you did it, so that if you leave or you get hit by a bus, I can easily drop someone in to replace you, and they're going to be able to do your job almost as effectively as you in a very short period of time. And it honestly makes it easier for the employees as well, because when you have clearly defined systems, everybody knows what to do. And it just worked really, really well.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Systems grow your business. The systems that define your business really will make or break how you guys operate. In fact, I have this theory too, that what you have right now is based on the systems that you've created, good or bad. If you have things that are going really well, you have good systems. If you have things that are going bad, well, those systems just aren't working the way you want them to work. This is not just the technology systems, but this is also the people systems you have. This is also about the systems that really define how you guys work together, communicate, listen or don't listen. All of these systems define your growth. When you think about your own systems, is it time for an upgrade? Well, I'm here with the founder of Maverick Media Ventures, and they were 2 times on the Inc. list. They reached 254 in 2019, 662 in 2020, all because of the systems that created that business. We're talking with Trent Dyrsmid, and he is really a powerhouse in this, a force of nature, if you will, around systems. He's known as the SOP guy, or maybe I gave him that name. But we talk about some of the details behind creating systems that allow your team to play at a new level, give them the autonomy that's necessary for them to improve those systems, but also what the systems do to grow your business. We look at some of the software that he's created along this journey because he wanted a way to actually share this with others. And we talk about that business as well, which is different than the other business. Trent shares all the details inside today's episode. Before we jump into it, let me remind you that if you are wanting to play at another level within your leadership, you want to be more strategic, more visionary, then sometimes you have to learn to let go of it. You have to take a different perspective. My job as an executive coach is to help you do that. If you want to check out some of the free resources we have, go to genehammett.com. If you want to actually schedule a call, you can actually try coaching out with me. I would love to connect with you and help you grow as a leader. Just go to genehammett.com. You'll find everything you need. Now here's Trent. Trent, how are you?
Very well, Gene. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, excited to have you on the podcast where we talk about all the things that founders, CEOs do to grow companies fast. You started Maverick Media Ventures. You made the Inc. list 2 times in a row. Impressive. How'd you get started in the e-commerce world?
So in April or so of 2016, couple of my internet friends, thanks to being a podcast host, I have lots of internet friends, people who I've known but I've never met. So these guys were selling on Amazon using the private label approach, and they were harassing me because they were both doing well, and they were harassing me to get started. And I had resisted for some time. Eventually I relented and I started off doing what people call the private label approach. And to be honest with you, I really wasn't very successful at it. I put about 4 months into it, and most of our success came out of these things called lightning deals, which when Amazon introduced them, they were free to do. Now they're not. And we weren't really making any money. And so I was quite frustrated and I was pretty much ready to give up. And because I made bad product selections essentially. And that's the risk with private label. If you make a bad product decision, it really doesn't matter how much marketing and stuff you do. If it's too competitive, you're just going to get your clock cleaned. And that's what was happening to me. So I interviewed this guy named Dan Metters, who introduced me to an entirely new way to sell on Amazon, which is the wholesale reseller method, where you're not getting products in China. You're not coming up with your own brand. You're literally just it's a B2B business. You're forming a relationship with the manufacturer to be an authorized reseller of their goods on Amazon. Some of the biggest Amazon resellers like Pattern and NetRush, eTails, it's the model that they follow. These companies are all doing over 100 million a year. So when I discovered that from interviewing him, I literally turned to my wife after the interview was over. I said, "Hey, honey, we're going to do that like right now." And within 5 months, Gene, thanks to the particular tactics that I employed, we were doing over 100,000 a month. We did over 1 million in our first year. And now we've been on the Inc. 5000 list up near the top end of it for 2 years in a row.
Well, you didn't get there alone. So you've built a team around you, but you have a unique approach around this. It's not your traditional, let me hire a bunch of local employees and go work in my warehouse, because you have a different type of business. Give us an idea of how you structure your team.
Yeah. So thanks to being a podcast host and a guy who's making his living online for years, I've been using virtual assistants from the Philippines for quite a while now, 10 years. And I'm very methodical and fanatical about business processes. I'm known in my corner of the internet as the SOP guy. SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure, which is really just a way of describing having a documented business process, describes exactly how to do a thing. And so what made us so successful was in this business, in Amazon wholesale reselling, there's the product sourcing aspect of the business is very laborious. And it's so laborious because you've got to find products, then you've got to find the contact information for the company that makes the product, then you need to reach out to them, and you're going to fail 99.5% of the time. So maybe 99% of the time. So you're only going to get 1 in 100 wins. So you have to send a lot of emails to get enough appointments to have conversations with these brands to basically pitch them on why you should become one of their authorized resellers, because none of them want any more authorized resellers. They all will say, "No, we don't want any more. Go away." Much like if you are a marketing agency and you're pitching for, restaurants, most of the restaurants you get a hold of, they're like, "No, we don't, go away. Bye, go away." So you just have to deal with a lot of failure. So the way that I did handle that was I wrote down all the procedures for everything to do with prospecting. So I had systematized the hell out of it. And then I hired a little army of folks in the Philippines to do all this work for me. And so all I had to do was come into the office each day, log into my inbox, and see how many replies that I received from all those hundreds and hundreds of emails that we were sending every single week. And then I put my little sales guy hat on, and I would deal with the replies. And if somebody said no, I would work on changing their mind to a yes. And occasionally some people would say yes right out of the chute, but if they're saying yes to me, they're going to say yes to everybody, and the profit margin is going to very quickly disappear. So really the success in the business comes from the ability to help a brand to understand why it's in their best interest to reconsider their position and say yes to you and no to everybody else. And I got particularly good at that.
Now hold on. Trent just talked about systems. The systems that you have in your business give you the results that you are getting right now. I said this in the beginning of the podcast, but if you have good systems, you may be getting good results out of it. If you feel like you're not getting something out of the business, then it's probably because your systems are working perfectly, but they're bad systems. You've got to look at those systems with a keen eye. You got to look at different perspectives, and you got to see what is working and be willing to change that. Be willing to get your others employees to change as well. When you think about your own leadership, the systems that you have created right now have given you exactly what you have, good or bad. Now back to Trent. So Trent, you talked about the power of systems there. And I think every leader knows that the systems that we have in our businesses really define our ability to leverage these ideas and really leverage a team. You've been known as the SOP guy for a while. When you think about systems, is this something that you have to keep reinventing, or did your team now at the point where they actually can improve the systems without you?
Second one.
How do you get to the place where people are improving the systems, from your baseline to just continue evolve as businesses do?
Well, having had the benefit of, everyone that was hired came into an organization where this having a system for everything was already the norm. So I didn't have the resistance of, hey, team of 20 people that has been operating for years this way, we're going to now start documenting all of our processes. There'd be a lot of pushback there.
Right.
I didn't have that problem. And I'm a big believer in giving my staff a lot of autonomy. And so I say, look, this is the finish line you need to get to. I don't care so much how you get there, but you better have a process documented that shows how you did it, so that if you leave or you get hit by a bus, I can easily drop someone in to replace you, and they're going to be able to do your job almost as effectively as you in a very short period of time. And it honestly makes it easier for the employees as well, because when you have clearly defined systems, everybody knows what to do. And it just worked really, really well.
Hold on one more second here. Trent just talked about autonomy. Well, employees want autonomy. When you hire people, they want to be left alone. They don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want you to look over their shoulder. Now, I know you don't do this all the time because you probably have too many employees for you to look over everyone's shoulder. But how do you take that autonomy to the next level? Well, one of the things is you upgrade your ability to empower them. The empowerment comes from a place of you allow them to have their own ideas, their own opinions. You allow them to make their own decisions. You allow them to pick up the pieces when things fall apart so that they own the results, because those people that really do own the results and own the process are going to own every piece of it, not just part of it. They need to own all of it. And your job as a leader is to make sure you're consistent enough with your empowerment and you trust them enough to allow them to have that autonomy. One of the things I'm really bringing this up over and over again, because it's such an important piece for you to play at another level, to be the strategic leader and visionary leader that you need, is to give others the chance to do all these other things that you don't need to be doing anymore. You need to play at a higher level. And so this allows you to do that if you do it right. Back to Trent. One of the things that I've seen with a lot of businesses is they're afraid to ask people to document their systems because they're afraid, oh, that we're going to replace you. But that's not the case. You're actually asking them to document the systems in a way that they can, have some control over their own job and own the fact that if it starts to break down, they can actually improve it themselves. That's the kind of autonomy you're talking about, right?
Yep. In many cases, like early on, when when I hired Laura, was one of my first hires, and then I hired another fellow, Jared. I just said, look, if you identify ways to improve the systems that I've created, hit the edit button and make the changes and then update them, because you're the one doing. I don't do this job anymore. Now you're doing this job. You're being held accountable to the results. And your compensation is being influenced by your ability to achieve those results. So far be it for me to micromanage you along the way, other than to have one guiding principle. You must have a documented business process for what you're doing. And periodically I would spot check so they would know that I was looking.
Well, I know you've kind of evolved into creating some other lines of businesses around this, but before we jump into that, give us a picture of what it looks like today in Maverick Media Ventures, because last time I talked to you, you're like, I'm really not involved.
I'm not. I'm not involved at all. I'm a shareholder. I literally have no day-to-day role other than giving the occasion, asking a few questions here and there, because I still pay attention to what's going on in that industry. And then being a sounding board and causing debate where needed, maybe making the occasional introduction, but that's about it.
How many people are on the team now?
It's very small. We have, my wife is a part-time managing partner, in that she does one meeting per week with the one employee that pretty much runs the company. And we have maybe 5 or 6, 7 virtual assistants. I don't even know the exact number. And that's it. Now, if I didn't have other business interests, I would put more resources behind it. But as we'll get into in this discussion, that business has now led me into other businesses that are more lucrative and have more upside. And not surprisingly, then I devote more of my resources to those, or to that business, my software company, because it just makes good sense to do so.
Well, let's go right into this software company, because I think you've set the tone for your thoughts around these SOPs, these systematization of a business has been what allowed you to grow. And you wanted to get into this new area that basically provided software for those that wanted to create these SOPs, right? Tell us a little bit about Flowster.
Yeah. So the background was I didn't sit down one day and like have this epiphany of an idea for a software company. It didn't happen like that at all. I stumbled into it, and I stumbled into it because of the success of my Amazon reseller business. So I got invited by Dan, the guy I mentioned earlier, to come to his conference after a year in the business. So we cracked $1 million in a year. And he said, "That's incredible. How the hell did you do that?" And I explained to him whatever I'd explained to you. And he said, "Well, would you like to come to my conference and talk about that?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds fun." And there was about 500 or so other Amazon resellers in his audience sitting there. This was before COVID, so we were all at a physical conference. And because of my podcast and my YouTube channel, many of these people knew who I was, but I didn't really sell anything. And so I got on stage and I said, "Hey, everybody, this is not a product pitch. I don't have anything for sale." I said, "I'm just going to explain to you how I accomplished this result. And, you should take a lot of notes because I'm going to give you a lot of information." And I proceeded to fire hose them with a very high level of detail over the next 90 minutes, explaining how I sourced all my products, how I hired VAs, how I implemented it all. And obviously the talk was all about my standard operating procedures. So at the end of that, people lined up at the microphones, or they sent me an email or a message on Facebook or whatever. And they all said the same thing. "I know I need what you just talked about, but I don't know how to build it, or I don't want to spend the year that it took you to create all this content. Can I just buy a copy of yours?" And that hadn't occurred to me, that people, like, I knew people sell lots of training courses, but it hadn't occurred to me that, because I don't think anybody has ever sold, by that point in time, had ever sold any SOPs, not that I'm aware of, not in our space. And so I thought, well, yeah, I said to Dan, I said, "Look, people seem to want to buy this thing." I said, "What if I make a copy of my processes? We'll give the product a name, which is now called WEBS, stands for Wholesale E-commerce Business Systems." I said, "If I create this thing, would you promote it to your audience? Because they seem to want to buy it." And he said, "Yeah, I think that would be a really good thing." So we did some math on the size of his customer lists. I assumed that if a quarter of his customers bought my WEBS product, that in our 7-day launch of that product, we would do $250,000 in revenue. And we ended up doing 412,000. So I was pretty stunned. Dan was pretty surprised. And I realized right at that moment that there's no better vote than a vote with a credit card, that there was significant demand for this product. And I realized that I was obviously going to keep selling it. So I then called my now CTO, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. He's a very technical guy. He'd already built and sold a software company. I was his roommate when he started it. And so, we knew each other really, really well. And I said, "Look, this is what just happened." And for the first release of the product, we didn't own the software. We just literally put it in somebody else's software application. And that had a bunch of negatives to it for us. Like, if somebody wanted a refund, how do we get the content back? There was just a bunch of stuff that was not ideal, but for the first launch, it was good enough. And he said, "Yeah, I'm in." And so in middle fall of 2017, he started hiring developers and we started writing code. And it took us a full year to get our software to the point where we could release it. And so in fall of 2018, when we launched WEBS, we released it on our own software. I had been using it now for like 6 months, but when I was using it originally, there was bugs all over the place. So he's fixing bugs constantly. And then since then, without even a dime of advertising, although we're about to start, there's 5,000 people now using the Flowster software platform. and I look at my reports and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people sign up a day. And I haven't even started to run ads yet. It's literally just because I get interviewed on podcasts like yours. People hear this story and it resonates with them, or they listen to my own show and they go sign up for it.
When you talk about the standard operating procedures, I think a lot of business owners go, yeah, that's what I want, right? So it's no surprise to me that you're getting demand for this, because we all want to have more control without having to manage the people, because managing work is actually the easy part of leadership. Have you found that?
Managing work is the easy. Yeah. I'm actually reading. So as the size of my team grows, and I expect that it will grow significantly this year as we start to, like, I've hired a VP of marketing and I've given her an ad budget. So we're probably going to start going off the blade of the hockey stick and up the handle. I realized that yours truly needs to really brush up on his leadership skills, because with a small team, it's not that hard, or at least I haven't found it that hard. But as the size of the team grows, I know it's going to be harder. So there's this transition that I, as the CEO, am now going through of, okay, I need to put myself in the position because of being a better leader, because as you build a team, you stop doing the things in the business. Like, I'm not doing customer service. I'm not doing product wireframes. I'm not even running the marketing anymore. Like, there's all this stuff that is now done by people I'm hiring, but I still have to lead them, and I still have to have a vision, and I still have to, there's things you got to lead. So I'm studying intently how to become a better leader.
Well, to that effect, Trent, we met and connected a few weeks ago, and we decided to do a little bit of a cross interview process where I'm going to actually coach you through this on our next call together, which is 2 days from now. I don't know when it'll publish, but I will let the audience know I'm going to be coaching you kind of live for your audience. Is that still on the target?
You betcha.
I appreciate you playing with me, because I don't get a chance to have recorded coaching conversations. So I'm letting people know here that are listening in that when we put this together, we'll kind of get them to come out close together. And I will definitely be giving you everything I've got around this to help you improve as a leader. And you guys get to experience what coaching is around leadership.
Well, I look forward to it.
I want to break in here for a second. If you haven't already checked out our message on YouTube, make sure you go to genehammett.com/YouTube. We put some content on there that you won't find anywhere else. We put it exclusively there so that you can go find the content in video format. There's short videos. You can get exactly what you need, get in and out, become a better leader. Just subscribe now. Go to genehammett.com/YouTube. Now back to the interview. Trent, I want to ask you one more question. Looking back at the success you've had in this business and other businesses, what have you learned the hard way in SOPs that could help others that are really trying to think about how do we put more system inside of our business?
So the people always want to know where they should start. I was having a conversation last night on my porch with a friend about who's looking to make the transition into being a business owner, and the advice that I gave him is largely the same as the advice that I would give to answer your question. The most important thing is to just start. And his objection was, well, I want to just randomly start and maybe waste 5 hours on something that would have been better spent on something else. And that risk always exists. It's part of the journey of an entrepreneur. The advice that I can give you with respect to developing SOPs is this. Look at the area. So I love to grow. So I always start with what causes growth, first of all. And then what are the most repetitive activities that are required to cause that growth? And am I doing them? Could somebody else be doing those activities? So if the answer was yes and yes, I'm doing them, and yes, somebody else could be doing them, and I'm in a phase of my business where growth is really important, I'm going to start documenting those processes, and I'm going to start delegating those processes to other people. Now, another entrepreneur might be at 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, and maybe growth isn't the issue. Maybe execution is the issue. Maybe that particular person is still being dragged too much into the hamster wheel of working in their business. So then look at those areas of execution. Look at the things that you are doing and develop a stop doing list, and then prioritize your stop doing list and figure out what areas could you create processes for. Ideally, maybe what areas could you put your team to be responsible for creating processes for. Although if it's something you're still doing personally, you're probably going to have to be the guy creating the process, or the gal, as the case may be, because nobody else is doing that job yet. So I guess to sum up, figure out where your time's getting sucked up and ask yourself, is that a working in the business activity, or is that a working on the business activity? The former, working in the business, I loathe them. I don't want to do any of that stuff. So I delegate like crazy. And so I focus my energies on making processes in those areas so that those areas are feasible and relatively easy for me to delegate to somebody else. And they'll get a similar level of results. Maybe not as good as me, but you can have growth or you can have control. I'm more interested in having growth than I am having control. So if someone is only 85% as good as me using my process, I can live with that. Some people, they're control freaks. They can't live with that. So they will forever be running a very small business.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's really great advice. I've got some similar kind of frameworks I use about your stop doing list, especially if you're too busy and you're really kind of stressed out. So Trent, thanks for being here, sharing your journey from one business, leveraging an opportunity for a new business, and sharing all of the ins and outs of that.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Gene. I obviously love talking about this stuff, and I love seeing entrepreneurs become more successful and gaining more freedom in their lives at the same time. So it's always a treat for me to get to spread the message.
So this wraps up another great episode of Growth Think Tank. I wanted to recap a little bit. What Trent talked about is, that stop doing list is a very important piece to you letting go of the day-to-day, becoming a more powerful leader. Because if you continue to hold on to everything that you're trying to hold on to now, you're probably limiting the company. You are the bottleneck. And that's really a dangerous place to be. If you want to continue to grow, you want to continue to evolve into a stronger leader. So my job as an executive coach is helping you understand those things, look at those blind spots, helping you identify, hold you accountable to it. If you have any questions, make sure you check out the free resources we have at genehammett.com. When you think about growth, you think about leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.